even civilization itself.
Johnny, we're not talking about that bloody medical emergency over the last 3 years, are we? We don't want to get banned off YouTube like we've done in the past, surely. Yeah, well, we should be all right, Johnny. I'm talking about Dr. John Campbell today, the brilliant Dr. John Campbell. Johnny, Dr. John Campbell, he's had a remarkable rise in popularity. Yeah, now he's been a source of inspiration for millions of people around the world during the so-called, Jesus, I don't like it, during the so-called medical emergency that we won't mention over the last 3 years. In fact, Dr. John started out as just telling everybody the facts as he saw them on the thing we can't mention, and a lot of people tuned in.
Now, I've got a couple interesting papers to bring you this evening. It's still the 11th of February. Now, just before I do that, there's been some interesting news.
Oh, look at him back there. What a bloody champion of the people he was.
Well, welcome to this talk, and I wanted to give you an update on the coronavirus, which is in the news. Now, there's quite a few things we don't know about this virus, but there's quite a few things we do.
Johnny, long-time viewers of the Dr. John Campbell show will see that there has been a change in the good Dr. John over the years. What do you mean he's changed? What do you mean he's changed? And he has gone from being just a blurber, if you like, of whatever the fucking government told him, into having a good hard look at it himself and coming up with a bloody slightly different point of view.
Well, warm welcome to today's talk, Tuesday the 6th of June. Now, today I want to report on the most impressive piece of scholarship that's so far been released on the effect of lockdowns. This is it here. The whole thing is available and in the public domain. And I'm just going to give you a headline to see if you want to watch this video or not. The talk is called Lockdowns Were a Costly Failure. And COVID-19 lockdowns were a global policy failure of gigantic proportions. According to this report. And this report actually looks at empirical data, real numbers in the real world, not modelling as was done pretty well always in the past.
You were saying that over the 3 years of this medical emergency we shall not mention, he's changed his tune?
So let's get straight down to what it's talking about. Now, lockdowns were a costly failure, a global policy failure. So this is everywhere. Pretty well wherever you are, we've been let down by our government. So we'll be looking at the way reports were written but not adequately scrutinised by government. Did lockdown, COVID restrictions, social distancing, non-pharmaceutical interventions, whatever you want to call it, affect COVID mortality based on the empirical evidence? This is not someone sitting in a back room with a sophisticated calculator or a sophisticated computer. This is actually real world data. What actually happened?
Oh, by Jesus, Johnny.
Now, I remember well, as I'm sure you do, it's pretty ingrained in my memory, that the UK government in the early press conferences, certainly the first press conference, was going to go for a herd immunity type approach. Just protect those that need protected and let things follow their natural course. Then we had this, the government got this information from the Neil Ferguson department in Imperial College London, and they changed overnight because they thought 400,000 people were going to die. Why didn't the government scrutinise that information properly? Why did they take the advice of one academic group in one university and base whole policies on that? And then the British decision, of course, influenced other decisions. Obviously, I would think it affected decision-making in the United States. Oh, well, that's what the Brits have done. We better do the same sort of mentality. But we hadn't analysed it adequately, clearly, patently. We now see that clearly. And it's unacceptable. This is a failure of government. I perceive this as a failure of government.
Holy shit!
Now, in comparison, just to start putting this in some sort of context, on an average flu season, 72,000 flu deaths in Europe, 38,000 flu deaths in the United States. England and Wales, it's 18,500 to 24,800. This is in an average typical flu season. These sort of deaths would be expected, and we've never had any of these measures for flu in the past, although we've had this with us for centuries. Why was COVID so different? Based on flawed modelling is the primary reason, followed up by incompetent government acceptance of that flawed modelling.
Right, yes. Yes, of course.
The negative conclusion is amplified by significant economic costs, so stunted economic growth. Unfortunately, public debts are now massive. We're now paying the cost of that, of course. Rising inequality, all bad. Damage to children's health and education, bad. Reduced health quality of life, bad. Increased crime, bad. Threats to democracy and loss of freedom, yes. A COVID disinformation unit that we looked at yesterday, set up by the British government, 77th Brigade, a branch of the British military, that may well have been used to spy on its own people. Not what we would prefer. It's not what I would prefer, and I suspect if you're watching, not what you would prefer either.
And he digs up things that the ordinary person, the ordinary person in the street, so to speak, hasn't been able to find, because you won't see a lot of this shit on mainstream media, that's for sure.
Conclusion from these authors: unless substantial alternative evidence emerges, lockdowns should be rejected out of hand for future pandemics. Negligible health effects and disastrous economic, very strong words, economic, social, political cost to society. Most likely lockdowns present the biggest policy mistake of modern times. Should I have been more critical of governments at the time? Obviously. But that was the only data we were getting. This is why trust has been destroyed. We trusted governments, we trusted our chief scientific officer, we trusted our chief medical officer. And that trust, I'm afraid, has been destroyed. And the implications of that are massive. Massive implications of that.
Good old Dr. John, he's feeling a bit shitty about it, as you can see. But don't worry, Dr. John, you put in your bloody 2 bobs worth, and you were educated, so to speak, on how the government and propaganda works.